Hello, I'm William McDonough. Today, I'd like to talk about cradle to cradle, the circular economy, and a circular carbon economy as strategies we can use for design for the future. If we start thinking about design, we have to start where we are. And as Carl Sagan said, if you want to design an apple pie from scratch, first you have to invent the universe. So if we look at our universe, it's comprised of energy from the sun, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, materials that are here, rocks and water, and then we get life. We get humus, and we are humans, and that word comes from humus, from soil. So physics combines with chemistry, and we get biology. That is us. This is order out of chaos. So when we think about that, we can think about what it means to do things efficiently. What is the right way to do things? But the first question really has to be, what is the right thing to do? Then we do it the right way. Because if we're doing the wrong thing, like putting carbon in the atmosphere at excess levels, then we're doing the wrong thing. And if we do it perfectly, we're being perfectly wrong. So when I was 19, I decided I might want to go in the arts. And if I did, I'd be an architect. And so I decided, what if I could design buildings that make oxygen, sequester carbon, fix nitrogen, create food, fuel, purify water, provide habitats, create microclimates, and change colors of the seasons? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could design buildings like trees? Carbon positive behavior. So in 1989, 31 years ago, I designed a building for the center of Warsaw, Poland, but said that the developer had to plant 10 square miles of trees to go with the building to offset its effects on climate. The Wall Street Journal thought this was strange enough to put on the front page. But notice the cost of this was only 10% of the advertising budget for the building. In 1995, I designed a building that can produce more electricity than it requires, net energy zero, or even positive. So a building like a tree, it purifies its own water. When we look at Ford Motor Company, we did a factory with 10.5 acre green roof, the world's largest. It reduces the energy in the building required, it provides habitat for birds, it purifies water. It saved Ford $35 million over chemical treatment plants and pipes. And so all of a sudden, a building like a meadow. When we then look at, NASA asked me to work on the Mars space station. And I said, can I come back to the blue planet first before we go to the red planet? And could I have the design team from the space station and do a building on Earth? So we did. So working with NASA scientists, we built a building on Earth that can make 140% of the energy it requires from renewable sources. The materials are designed to go back into industry forever, and the project was done on the same budget as a normal federal office building and the same schedule. A building like a tree. Now, when you think about this together, you realize that we can design things that go into nature, what we call the biological cycles, as biological nutrients, and they're products of consumption. We consume them, waste equals food. But we can also look at technology and think, oh, ever since we started taking metals and making things, what we really want is the service of the computer, not the ownership of lots of complex chemicals. So we call these products as a service. With a light fixture, you want the light, not the indium or the gallium. So we call these technical nutrients, and we can design them to return to technology. So in the book, Cradle to Cradle, which I published in 2002 with Dr. Michael Braungart, chemist, we basically posited that there are three things to think about here. One, waste equals food. In nature, one thing's waste becomes another thing's food. Eliminate the concept of waste. Two, use clean energy. Rely on natural energy flows. And three, celebrate diversity, biodiversity, diversity of people, culture, and technology too. So my first product after designing buildings was it's fabric, simple fabric for furniture. But we decided to design it without persistent toxins, no bioaccumulative substances, endocrine disruptors, birth defects, carcinogens, mutagens, heavy metals. And we designed a fabric so safe you can eat it, and the water is so clean you can drink it. Why wouldn't we do that? We also designed with technical materials, in this case polymers, where we could redesign carpet so that it could come back and be made into carpet again, clean and safe. So the top is a nylon that goes back through chemical recycling. The back is polyolefin that can go back through thermal recycling. But you're basically storing all your raw materials on your customers' floors. So imagine we don't have mining and we don't have all these other things we don't need when we can take things back and use them again and again. So for Herman Miller, I designed their factories to make this furniture, but we also designed the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation System that allows us to design products that come apart in the future and we can reuse all the materials safely. We also design with this idea of a product as a service. What you want is to wash clothes. What you get is metal, aluminum, glass, rubber. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could see these things as providing cleaning services, but the materials are still part of the industrial ecosystem. Product as a service. Philips is now selling light, not the fixture. So you get the light fixtures, but when you're finished, they can take them back and use the materials again. So these are cradle-to-cradle products, and we developed a certification system in the public domain. So what is cradle-to-cradle design? It calls for material health first and safety for all people. So biological and technical materials, but safe. Second is circular economy. Use the materials again. And that is a critical part of the quantification of the economy because we get to use it again. But it's important that it's safe first, because if we have unsafe materials and we're using them again, it's worse. So first is safety, second is circular economy, third, renewable energy, fourth, water stewardship, and of course, social fairness and sharing the abundance of this goodwill and this good design. So when we look at the 5 conditions of cradle-to-cradle design, and then we realize they are foundational to all the Sustainable Development Goals, all 17, like to know that we have this in order to achieve these things. So this is an important basis. And the history of the circular economy comes from Cradle to Cradle too. And this is a history put forward by the ABN AMRO Bank in Netherlands, where it shows that the search for the terms circular economy come starting with the early publications and moving to the present, which is very exciting. And in 1999, I was in Beijing representing the United States with China, represented by Deng Xiaoping's daughter. And the paper we're sharing and the information we're sharing is Cradle to Cradle, the circular economy, and the concept of an ecological civilization. Now, that has been taken up by China, circular economy, vigorously in their 11th and 12th, 13th five-year plans. So what we're looking at there is, for example, how to make cities that are carbon positive, cities like forests, like buildings like trees, where materials go back from natural systems to natural systems, and things in technical systems go back to technical systems. Here's a concept for a city in China designed for the China Development Bank. 100,000 people who could feed and power and provide the water for themselves in 128 square kilometers. So this concept works at every scale, from the molecule to the product, to buildings, communities, regions. And it was wonderful to bring it into the World Economic Forum in Davos. I was the chair of the first Meta Council for Circular Economy. And this is now being looked at by countries and companies around the world. So it comes from biological and technical. That's been used by groups like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. But we also see some people looking still at the idea that the circular economy is a linear economy, twisted into a circle. And I think it's important to recognize the biological and technical cycles. So design is the first signal of human intention. So we have to ask ourselves, did we intend to damage the air, the soil, and the water? Climate change is the result of a design problem. We need a new design. Nature doesn't have a design problem. Humans do. So cradle to cradle, the circular economy, and the circular carbon economy allow us to start designing, realizing that carbon is not the enemy. It's a wonderful element. In fact, it's the basis of life. We are carbon. So let's not go to war on carbon, because we use carbon as a tool, and it's the value of it is put there by the intention of the user. So if we give it to a child, it becomes a toy, a hammer. If we give a hammer to a carpenter, it becomes a house. If you give a hammer to a maniac, it could become a weapon. So the thing to remember in the circular economy is carbon is both a material and a fuel. So it's different. So we need a new language of carbon. So I propose this in an article in Nature in 2016. Let's talk about living carbon. Carbon from the atmosphere, combining with the earth, water, and providing for life with photosynthesis. Positive behavior. Durable carbon, carbon materials that we can use over generations. Recycling materials, steady materials. This is carbon neutral behavior. And then, negative behavior. Fugitive carbon. Carbon escaping to the atmosphere, scraping to the oceans in durable form. We lost it. So living, durable, and fugitive carbon. Now, when we look at the circular economy, we realize we want to reduce our use of things that are unnecessary. We want to reuse things to the extent we can, and we want to recycle things as well. So reduce, reuse, recycle. But we also now need to imagine that we can remove something as well, not just reuse. This is removing carbon from the atmosphere, removing carbon from our fuel sources. This is really important, because if we look at the cradle-to-cradle circular economy of biological and technical nutrition, and these cycles, we realize they're powered by energy. And so that energy principally has been carbon-based. Now, nature knows how to recover carbon from the atmosphere. It is natural. But the technosphere doesn't. It uses carbon fuels, and they basically go to the atmosphere. So we have some carbon materials that we use for polymers and other things, and this we need to keep within that cycle. So instead of just saying we have to decarbonize as a general statement, what we have to do is decarbonize the atmosphere, and we have to recarbonize the biosphere. So think about that. Decarbonize the atmosphere, decarbonize the energy sources, decarbonize transportation. That's why we're looking at the electrification, for example, of transportation, or fuel cells for intense use. But we have to decarbonize industry. What we want to do is recarbonize the biosphere, build our soils back, regenerative agriculture, things like that, ecosystem recoveries. We want to recarbonize the technosphere, design carbon-based materials that we can use over and over again. And we want to recarbonize the geosphere. If we've taken carbohydrates and hydrocarbons out of the ground, we can put them back. And so I think long term, we're going to see that we need carbon recovery and removal from the atmosphere beyond that which nature can do, because we've really overplayed our use of carbon, and we have excess carbon in the atmosphere we have to go recover and bring back down. So just efficiency won't help us. It's not adequate. I mean, it helps us, but it's not enough, because being less bad is not being good. If we tell our children our goal is to be less bad, you're telling them we want a less unsafe, less unhealthy, less unjust world with less polluted air, soil, water, and power, economically driven. Really important things to do, no question. Please do these things. But it's still sad, because our goal becomes nothing, is to be nothing. And if we want to reduce our badness, and we say we're going to reduce our carbon emissions by 20% or our toxics by 20%, what you're saying is what you're not going to do. It'd be like telling a taxi driver, quick, I'm not going to the airport. It's information, but how useful is it really? So what we need to do now is to get excited about a positive future and take all the things we don't want and put them below the line and say these we're driving towards zero. And what we want to do also is to bring in the things we do want. Clean, safe water, clean, safe energy, good lives, good sharing, sharing of abundance, not being greedy with the limits. So let's take an inventory of all the choices we have by design, put it through the intellectual filters of good and bad, get rid of the bad and bring in the good. Because our goal now needs to be more good. A delightfully diverse, safe, healthy, and just world with clean air, soil, water, and power, economically, equitably, ecologically, and elegantly enjoyed. This is design. This is our hope.